So I was born and raised in Bombay or Mumbai as it's known now in India. Um, I did my initial schooling till high school and then my undergrad in India at Holy Family High School and then at this Institute of Chemical Technology as it's known now, but previously it was known as Mumbai University Institute of Chemical Technology. So it's right now a deemed university, a university in its own right, but before associated with Mumbai University. And so I did my chemical engineering over there. It was a great school, one of the highest ranked schools for chemical engineering in India and in Asia. And that set my base for me to come to the US to do my master's in chemical engineering. So I did a master's with a heavy component of research. So I actually published 2 papers in polymer technology in this field of polymer nanoparticle hydrogels. So my first 4 or 5 years, 5 to 6 years after graduating with my bachelor's in chemical engineering was we are very much on the research and product development side of materials and chemicals. So I did my master's. I spent 4 years doing research. I initially thought I would do a PhD in my topic of polymer nanoparticle hydrogels. But then I realized that I needed to go and get some more experience in the field before I decided what I wanted to do my research and PhD in. So that's why it took like about 4 years to graduate. Published 2 papers. I was on the way to like doing a third. And then I was like, okay, let me go into the field first. And so it was a good experience, a good learning experience. But eventually I realized that I do not want to like spend that much time doing research as much as I wanted like be involved in the product development side of things, going all the way back to like, what is the need for a product to exist in the first place? So the market research that goes into it, knowing the market, knowing the consumer's needs. And then from there, like, what is the process of like how, once you understand the need for a product, how you develop that. So that led me to pursue the business angle of all of that. So I then decided to switch my careers and go into business analytics as a result. I'd always worked as a TA for a long time, and I always liked teaching people, but also I enjoyed understanding I enjoy the challenge of understanding what, help people achieve the best outcomes in their learning process. So I kind of arrived at an enlightenment of sorts in that sense, in a narrow sense, which is like, how do you make people do their best at competitive tests? And I figured that would be the easier challenge to tackle because when you have to apply to grad school, you need to give your GRE or GMAT. And then in undergrad, you have like the SCTs and the ACTs over here, and you have a lot of competitive tests back in India as well. And so the challenge for me was like, that would be the easier thing to tackle because of its highly metric-based way of evaluating students. And while I was preparing for my own GRE, I realized that like there is a very scientific way you can go about to improve your score. And then that can then be related back to like how you're preparing for the exam, how you're learning, and how do you then focus your energy and your efforts and resources on like tackling these topics that are more crucial to improving your score. So that was the genesis of the idea I had for my startup, the Bombay Prep Company, where I realized that there could be like a highly analytical way of preparing for competitive tests. And so based on that, I started to grow my idea and my startup. And so it went from like, basically $0 to like almost $3,000 in revenue within 6 months. And then that was what kind of convinced me on the path of business analytics. It is really like experience in the field itself. I enjoyed the thrill of like growing a business. I enjoyed the thrill of relating data, real world data, back to like how to solve a problem and how to grow a product. And I realized that that is the challenge I was looking for. And so then I realized that I got to change my direction. And so I went, solely headfirst into the business analytics world. So that's when I also applied to the Masters of Science in Business Analytics program at Santa Clara University. And so from there on, it's been like interesting and challenging journey, but also really enjoyable journey in analytics and data science. I started off as like a person of science. I really liked physics and chemistry. I liked doing research. My background is very much experimental research. My first few years in the professional workforce was like working with my hands in the lab. And that's what I saw myself back then. But I think my first real eye-opening experience to like how it's not just like solely what you do in the lab and what science innovates on that dictates like product development. I realize a lot of it is dictated by like what the consumer wants, whether that consumer is like your daily average consumer amongst the lay people, or whether it's like another business or another company want to buy a product, make another different product. I realized that like that it drives a lot of like the initial discussions around like what the product is, the product conception, the route for the developing the product. And I realized a lot of what you think is capable in lab does not directly translate into like a product that goes out in the market. And I really found that process to be interesting, eye-opening, and really educative. And in a broad sense, since about the last 6-7 years, my entire effort has been in trying to understand that, like the sausage making process, if you will. And as a scientist, I was involved in like the really early phase of making sausage. And I realized that there is a lot that goes in between. Just because you have a good tasting meat and good spice and a good recipe doesn't mean like it's something that like consumers will like right away. And so the coming into that and learning all of the things that go into making a product was really what piqued my curiosity. And so I would treat myself, I would look at myself as a little bit of an entrepreneur and a little bit of a business person, but with enough security and knowledge in my experience in science and as a scientist to know that like I am pursuing something that's not just a marketing idea, but like based in logic and science. For me, the biggest challenge was coding. And I think that's a notion that I want to dispel for like a lot of people, which is that like engineering is a lot more than like what is known in India and the rest of the world as, which is like, oh, you go and like write some code on computer. I think a lot of it is still, grounded in like the practices, engineering practices from, the 2000s, from the 20th century. And especially in chemical engineering, to the extent that like the technology and software and coding skills still aren't that big a part of like a chemical engineer's arsenal of skills as much as it might be for an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer. So for me, that was a big challenge. And I know for a lot of people who come from, say, a background of chemical engineering or the hard sciences or biology, or even like, let's say, certain other chemical engineering fields, I would definitely encourage them to go and like learn coding. Learn how to code. Don't learn to be a software engineer necessarily, but just understand what it means to code, what it means to develop an algorithm, and what it means to like think from the mindset of a coder, because that is the number one skill required if you want to move into business now. Even if you are looking to make a career as a management consultant or an entrepreneur, just because so many of the products are now driven by access to technology, whether it's like using data science or machine learning to find out new revenue streams, or whether it is like using those skills to develop an app or a website to make it easier for you to reach your consumer. I think a lot of those skills are very well served with the base knowledge of coding. So that's the one advice I have for my fellow engineers, especially from the more experimental background. I would say is like make sure and like go back and like brush up on your coding skills. If you haven't had the experience of dealing with the people side of things and the business side of things, I think that is a little bit more easily addressed. And that is by, just go out there into the wild, so to say, go out there with like, interacting socially with people, attending meetups, attending events where you can volunteer. I did a lot of that in my last 10 years at Maryland, in my undergrad before that at ICT, and as well as in Santa Clara and in between. I've always been volunteering, always been like going to social events, public events, because that forces you to talk to people and understand how to solve problems on the spot, especially in event management. And that's the kind of education that you can get pretty much like nowhere else. So that was another big aspect of like how I improved my people skills, my problem-solving skills that are not related to science and engineering, but like there is a problem right now that needs to be solved in the next 5 minutes, and that's related to like logistics or like providing a person what he needs. That I think translates well into like business as well, because a lot of times, as you might have realized, when you just set up a meeting right now, it's like you cannot always expect things to go smoothly as planned. And I think from an engineering and research mindset, we spend so much time designing experiment, making sure that like we have all the equipment and the other resources in place to go and conduct experiment, that we do not understand that in the business world, it's quite different. A lot of things are like very ad hoc sometimes. So you definitely get a sense of that when you go out there and interact with people socially, but also like participate in like meetups and events and like organize things. The first aspect is like your base skills in coding, which you have to have. And if you don't have them, you would have to go out and develop those skills. Because right now, in business analytics, but not just in business analytics, but in other areas of business, understanding databases, how they are managed, the relationships between different objects in a database, that I think is one of the very basic skills required to succeed in business in general. And that I realized not just by working as a business analyst, but also talking to my managers and bosses, and looking at their ability to understand these aspects of it, even though they don't do an ounce of coding in their day-to-day jobs, but knowing that they understand this base of database skills and like querying knowledge that underpins all of like how do you work with data in business. So that is one of the most basic skills in coding, is understanding databases. How do things work in the background? What is the different relationship between objects in a database, and how does that relate to like the real life objects or entities that exist in a business environment? Then on top of that, I would add that like you need to have certain scripting skills. So this is like what you think when you think about like a coder writing programs or codes, is that like you're working with like scripting languages like Python or C# or C++, Java, R, which is like a heavy statistics-based language. You need to understand how to code in that. I think for a business analytics professional, that is the next step, which is that there isn't really a way out of it. And I forgot to mention SQL or SQL, which is a database querying language. You have to have your basic skills in that developed, preferably before you come into a degree like that, which wasn't the case with me. And so that was part of the big learning curve and a sharp curve, at that. And that's the one aspect I would like to harp on, almost to a point of like sounding boring to my fellow professionals from science and in engineering and research background, because we don't really get an opportunity to do that, because most of our database and spreadsheet skills are limited to Excel. I think that might be one of the biggest impediments when somebody tries to consider a career in business analytics or data science. It's like, oh wow, I have to do all this coding now. I know certainly I felt that, which is what held me back for a long time. But the earlier you make your foray into databases, into SQL language scripting, coding, as well as like Python, which is one of the easiest languages out there to learn. And then, as needed, moving up the language chain. That's the way I think about it, into Java, into C++ or C# or R for that matter. The earlier you make your entry into that world of coding, the easier it gets as time goes on. So when I say early, it could be as early as like 5 or 6, but definitely for people making that switch late like me, taking on certain simple projects in your undergrad and hacking away at the side in your personal time, it's definitely something I would recommend if one does want to venture into data science. The other aspect, the second aspect of it, is like how deep you need to go into coding depends on what you plan to become eventually in the field of business analytics at large and in data science in particular. And those are two different things, right? So business analytics is all the analytics as well as the data science concepts and techniques you need to know to take business decisions. But data science is like a broader area of like statistical sciences, which is related to how do you manage data, how do you extract more information from it, and how do you make sure the data you are interpreting is statistically relevant. And that's where I think our program had a good balance of straddling both sides. Although it was a business analytics degree, we had enough courses in machine learning, in statistics, in deep learning, and pricing or marketing analytics for us to understand if we liked those topics a lot more to then go deeper into that. I know a lot of my fellow classmates found jobs as a data scientist, but also as data architects and principal leaders of their data science teams. And while they might have found those jobs because they already had a base in data science or business analytics, I think it also made it easier for them to know how much deeper they had to go into coding. I know a person who's a data architect who wouldn't necessarily think of as a coder, but I know his coding skills are up to scratch enough for him to function as a data architect. And then I know of people who started off as software engineers, but who might still find transition difficult into being a data scientist, because although you know your coding, you still have to know the mathematics behind statistics to make the transition from being a software engineer to a data scientist. So that is where you have to evaluate yourself. Are my coding skills up to scratch? For a person, again, from my perspective, coming in from science and research, where we tend to be more proficient in mathematics, and coding is the efficient aspect of our professional skills. So that's where I would then ask the question: do I need to understand more about object-oriented programming, for example, or building nested functions and stuff like that? And those are the more advanced topics in coding that then I would advise people to think about. But that is something I would encourage people to think about once they realize what kind of business analytics professional or data science professional they want to become. For me, having made my initial foray into the world of entrepreneurship and in startups, I really wanted to be in an environment where like startups, the word startup came to existence, right? And so for me personally, it's been a great experience and a great opportunity to pursue this degree at Santa Clara University in the heart of Silicon Valley. The university knows where its strengths lie. And so we have strong partnerships with a lot of people in Silicon Valley. And I think the university's used that really well to its advantage, especially setting us up with practicum programs. As well as just having being based in the heart of Silicon Valley just makes it easier to meet a lot of people in the valley. So whether those are like other fellow entrepreneurs or like whether you want to like get some coding help or programming help for your startup, or whether it's like meeting your fellow VCs, or in general for me, which I like the most, is like having these conversations in a coffee shop. Right. Again, the cliche is true. You're more bound to like run into those people and have like really meaningful conversations. A lot of like my networking actually predates me, pursuing my business analytics degree in Santa Clara University. So I should attend a lot of these meetups while I was here in 2016. So my wife moved to California in 2015. Before we got married, and that was a big part of like me coming to the Silicon Valley as well. But definitely the other thing that I liked the most was like this access to networking anytime you want. If you didn't have plans, like the way I looked at it is like if I didn't have plans with my friends or like for a night out, and if I wanted to keep myself busy, I would just go on meetup.com or like Facebook or any of these other groups, and Eventbrite, for example, and just look up like what events are there. And there were like a 50% chance that there was an event nearby within a 20-minute driving distance or Uber. And that proximity and access to networking, to your fellow professionals, is I think one of the strengths of Santa Clara University that I was able to leverage, especially because the business analytics program was an evening-based program, classes in the evening. And so it gave me a lot of time in the daytime to like pursue these opportunities. And the way I think there was a little bit of flexibility from the program as well in trying to engineer this program more to my needs, because I knew I needed more business courses. I was able to pursue them either through like the electives offered to me or, just by auditing certain courses. The program has now changed a little bit to include more of the coding courses, which again was a suggestion from a lot of the students. But personally, I felt that being a business analytics degree as opposed to being a data science degree was something that really served me well, because again, I was looking to like sharpen my business courses and my business knowledge, increase my business knowledge rather, not sharpen. And in a way, like my networking, I did outside of my school mandated coursework. I tried to like marry that with like the courses I would take and the knowledge I would gain from them. So for example, one of the topics close to my heart is like venture capital and entrepreneurship. And while there are other programs out there which are better known for that, Babson College being one of them, I felt that like this allowed me to like kind of like fashion my own curriculum, if you will, right? Attending and networking sessions I wanted to. And we had like quite a few management and venture capital courses in the program. And then we had a competition which Santa Clara has been a part of for a long time, which is the venture capital investment competition. And being able to participate in that, while I didn't make it to the Santa Clara team, which competed with other colleges, just being a part of that experience was really good. And those are the things that I take away from like my time in the program. And I think that I'm not sure how much other people might have leveraged that. I knew of like my fellow classmates in my program, but also in the MBA program and the MSIS and the MS Finance program who used that and leveraged that quite a bit. So while it might not be like a majority or even like a quarter of the program which might have used that, just having that opportunity to seek other courses and fashion your kind of like curriculum and networking around that by dint of being in Silicon Valley helped me a lot personally. So that is one of the things I would advise people looking to apply to Santa Clara University. When I came into Santa Clara University, I was not well versed with coding. I definitely did not have the background in business and in data science. The flexibility of the program, that is business analytics as opposed to data science or information science, helped me understand what my strengths were and helped me understand, again, from point of view of a researcher, understand how much coding I needed to handle and make myself comfortable with. And so that definitely helped me find myself in the world of business analytics, which was more in business than on data science side of things. And definitely coming into Santa Clara University, building the relationships that I have with my fellow classmates, with my professors and the bigger community over there helped me in my job search as well. And so right now I work for Xilinx as a data analyst, but dealing more with the reporting and data visualization side of things. One of the understated strengths of Santa Clara University is its alumni and its network. And I found Santa Clara alumni at almost in almost every company I looked around in the Bay, but also beyond the Bay. And so definitely would like to give them a big thumbs up and huge props as well in being so active and also inculcating within me a sense of like wanting to do the same for our fellow Broncos. So definitely where I am right now, in to a huge deal and extent, is because of like Santa Clara University, the program within Leavey School of Business Analytics, being the way it's been fashioned and the way it's straddling the lines between business as well as data science.